Okay, so we're going to dig into a book today that was written way back in 1958, but, and this is the crazy part, it feels like it could have been written this morning. It's called The Affluent Society by Kenneth Galbraith, and it zeroes in on this really strange paradox about modern life. And I'm telling you, once you see it, you'll start seeing it absolutely everywhere. So here's the big question, the puzzle at the heart of it all. How is it that so many of us can be surrounded by private wealth? Amazing phones, incredible cars, just endless stuff to buy. But at the same time, our shared public world feels like it's crumbling. You know what I'm talking about? The potholed roads, the underfunded schools, the neglected parks. It just doesn't add up, right? Well, Galbraith gives us a framework for understanding exactly why this happens. And Galbraith just paints this perfect, vivid picture of the whole problem. Imagine this family from the 50s. Their car is this perfect little bubble of private luxury. Air conditioning, power, everything. But the moment they look outside the window, the public world they're driving through is a mess. They eat their fancy packaged food right next to a stream that's literally polluted. This contrast, this image, it's not just a clever sentence, it's the whole mystery we're here to solve. So where do we even start to unravel this riddle? Well, the first big clue, according to Galbraith, is that we're basically running a 21st century economy on software from the 18th century. We're using a set of really old, outdated ideas. And he gave these ideas a special name, the conventional wisdom. So what exactly is this conventional wisdom? Well, here's the key. Galbraith says it's not about what's actually true, it's about what's comfortable. It's that set of ideas we all just kind of accept without thinking because, they sound familiar, they don't challenge us too much, and honestly, they let us off the hook from having to think too hard about whether they even apply anymore. And if you look back at where this conventional wisdom came from, it all starts to make sense. It was born in an age of real, desperate scarcity. You had early economists like Malthus and Ricardo who basically saw mass poverty as a permanent, unavoidable fact of life. Their entire worldview was built on this tradition of despair, where the one and only economic goal was just producing enough stuff to keep people from starving. The problem is that old mindset is still baked into our economic thinking, even though we now live in a world of incredible abundance. See, in our world, the problem isn't making enough stuff. We're great at that. The problem is something totally different. And this leads us to Galbraith's second big idea, and this one is a real game changer. He says we need to stop just thinking about how to satisfy our wants and start asking where our wants even come from. And this is it. This is maybe his most powerful concept, the dependence effect. Now, the old economic textbook tells you people have wants and companies make products to satisfy those wants. Simple. Galbraith comes along and flips that completely upside down. He argues that in the modern economy, companies first produce the goods, and then they get to work manufacturing the desire for those goods. Think about that. Our wants aren't just bubbling up from inside us, they are actively created by the very system that says it's just trying to serve us. So how does this actually happen? Well, it's a pretty simple two-step dance. Step 1, advertising. It works 24/7 to convince us that we're incomplete, that our lives are lacking something that this shiny new product can fix. And then step 2 kicks in, social pressure. Once a few people on your block get the new thing, you start to feel like you need it too, just to keep up. It's a ridiculously effective engine for creating an endless cycle of wanting more. Okay, so what happens when you take an economy that's still obsessed with production and you combine it with this powerful machine for creating private wants? You get the last piece of the puzzle. You get what Galbraith called a massive and destructive social imbalance. And this is what it looks like in the real world. We pour all this incredible energy, technology, and creativity into making our private goods more and more luxurious. Why? Because that's where the want creation machine is pointed. Meanwhile, our shared public spaces, our streets, our parks, they don't have an advertising budget, so they just get left behind. We end up with that beautiful, air-conditioned car driving on a horribly paved road. And this imbalance, it's not just about roads and cars. It cuts way deeper. The exact same logic applies to our services. We have an almost infinite supply of new TVs, new gadgets, new kinds of chips. But the public sector, the part of our society that's supposed to educate our kids, take care of our public health, keep our parks safe, is constantly told there's no money. We've become a society that's incredibly rich in things, but dangerously poor in the services that actually build a good life. But why do we just let this happen? Galbraith says it's because of a deep-seated bias in our culture. We're taught to believe that the private market is always smart, efficient, and good. But when we think about public spending, we have this almost ancestral suspicion of wasteful governments and bad kings. So we cheer on the production of more mouthwash, but we get skeptical when someone suggests investing more in schools or public pools. So now we get it. We understand the paradox of private riches and public poverty. But Galbraith's point isn't just to make us feel bad. Understanding this whole system forces us to ask a much, much bigger question, a question that gets to the very heart of what we think a good society is. And that question is, what does progress even mean now? Because here's the absolute fundamental truth of our time. That ancient economic problem that defined humanity for thousands of years, the brutal struggle against scarcity, the simple need to produce enough food and shelter to survive, it's over. We solved it. We are unbelievably, fantastically good at making stuff. We won that fight. And that brings us to Galbraith's final challenge to all of us. He says that to keep pretending that producing more and more consumer goods is our #1 goal would be, in his words, fully as tragic. We've solved the old problem. So now the real question, the most important question we can ask is, what is the next great task? What does a society that's truly rich in things, yes, but also rich in schools, in parks, in health, in community, what does that actually look like? Figuring that out, well, that's the real work of our time.